Gives me great pleasure to introduce panel number 4. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Dr. Abu Nasser. And that's a great, actually, segue to introduce Professor Yasser Abu Nasser, who will be kindly moderating this panel. His full bio is on the website of City Debates, so please refer to it. I will just say that he's an associate professor of landscape architecture and environmental planning in the Department of Landscape Design and Ecosystem Management, which is slowly but surely migrating to the School of Architecture and Design. Yasser is also a department head, associate dean, program director of the Bachelor of Landscape Architecture, and he is also the director of the Metropolitan Landscape Research Lab, which he established in 2018. His research is listed in his bio, his thematics, so I don't want to take further time, and we need to begin on time. I will just thank him for taking time out of his very busy schedule to be with us and give him the floor to coordinate the panel today. تفضل ياسر.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harub, Muna. So our session today is about governing territories. I think it'll be a very interesting session that really brings, governance into the focus with its relationship to land, property rights, conflict, and financialization, which is a new word I just discovered from this panel. So the way the panel will go, I will introduce each speaker before they speak, and then we'll have the 4 speakers together consecutively, and then we'll finish with questions and a discussion as we move forward. So our first panelist is Tuna Tasan-Kok. She currently holds the chair of urban governance and planning and serves as the research group leader of the urban planning group within the Department of Geography, Planning and International Development Studies at the University of Amsterdam. Her research primarily focuses on urban governance with a particular focus on the dynamics of property-led urban planning. She'll be presenting her recent research work titled Piecing Together Istanbul's Puzzles of Oddities.
Hi, good morning from Amsterdam. I'm sorry I'm not there with you. In this talk, I will focus on a combination of several fundamental dynamics that shape the city of Istanbul between the actions of the financialized authoritarian state, a municipal agency with limited regulatory powers, and growing entrepreneurial urban communities. This talk is a collaboration between published work and ongoing research conducted by both myself and my PhD student, Ebru Kurt Özman. It may seem unusual to have so many different dynamics present in one city, but Istanbul's financialization has been constantly evolving since the last military coup of 1980 and has been increasingly driven by the property market dynamics ever since. This evolution has brought together a unique combination of state authoritarianism, municipal dysfunction, legal ambiguities, and emerging entrepreneurial communities, all of which have contributed to path-breaking changes in the city that I would like to talk about today. Left behind areas that are economically declining often represent hotspots of disadvantage and discontent, but they are also places of change, opportunity, and even speculation. In fact, policymakers often collaborate with market parties to develop mega projects in these areas. This map that you see at the bottom displays the spread of these areas throughout Istanbul. The relationships that transform left behind places, usually informal areas, squatter areas, and so on, are usually triggered by critical junctures of legal and institutional settings and communities' adaptive capacities. The more adaptive you are, the better you get profits from this transformation processes. In our work, in this published work, we argued that path-breaking trajectories emerge during this redevelopment process in distinct ways, depending on the adaptive capacity of urban communities and flexibility in the planning practices. Focusing on the squatter areas in Istanbul, we map out these path-breaking trajectories in institutional and policy contexts, concluding that the authoritarian entrepreneurial governance landscape operates in a dual context. While it creates regulatory tools to bypass locally elected democratic authorities, the municipality, it also repoliticizes urban communities in unexpected ways. These trajectories of change point out unexpectedness in the process of urban transformations. The primary cause of significant changes in the spatial governance of cities is often attributed to the market's influence and financialization processes and the evolving role of the state to enable market dependency. And as we know from the existing work, this hyperactive capacity of the capital that finds itself productive spaces, it also comes with regulatory restructuring for market-friendly political environments, basically recreating new state market and citizen relations in cities. The Turkish state is skilled with navigating around local democratic urban planning and spatial governance channels. They achieve this by using regulatory ambiguity to facilitate property-driven urban regeneration. This approach is enabled by the central government, which continuously modifies and circumvents established local planning regulations through bylaws and technical specific legislations. For instance, earthquake regulations are enforced in neighborhoods to compel them to undergo renewal projects, even when it may not be necessary. Of course, who can disargue against this kind of regulations? The state's mass housing authority, known as TOKİ, originally created to provide affordable housing, also has become an instrument for displacing local communities and creating more luxury mass housing in cities, especially in these left behind areas. The municipality is attempting to gain more power, especially after their recent electoral victory in Istanbul and other big cities against the ruling party. However, the municipality is also facing difficulties in establishing legal certainty. This power struggle has resulted in the replacement of previously flexible and intricate arrangements with a more rigid and less adaptable system imposed by the government, the central government. The new system aims to provide clarity and security to property rights, but it often involves the abuse of legal ambiguities and arbitrary actions by both state and private actors. To give you an idea of the situation, let me explain how the city is dealing with the challenge of defining its overall development plans while facing significant pressures from the state. The Municipal Planning Agency has conducted an environmental analysis and identified a preservation zone in the north of the city at the metropolitan area that protects the area's forests and freshwater reservoirs. This zone is highlighted in this red circle in the map, as you can see in the map. Keep this red area in mind, please. Here you see, in fact, based on several analyses, the city revealed plans in 2006 to 2010 to expand the urban development in the southwest-southeast axis and reported that the northern natural protection zones should be strictly protected for the sustainable development of the city and, of course, to protection of the reserves that the city has. These analyses resulted in the master plan, which was revealed in 2010 accordingly. I happened to be in Turkey at that year and witnessed all this myself taking place. Almost at the same time, the municipality released their plans, the central government announced a project in a newspaper, almost in a kind of hand-sketched map, as you can see in the screen, to link the Marmara Sea to Black Sea through an artificial channel. It's called Canal Project. This would create several new settlements and a third bridge, as well as a new motorway linking different areas in the northern part of the city. Unfortunately, this project would literally cut through the environmental protection zones, as you will see here, creating new property development and speculation on rural and environmentally protected areas in the metropolitan region of Istanbul. Strangely, as you will see in this figure, celebrated by the Ministry of Environment and called as the Dream. Despite facing opposition and protests from various social groups, the entrepreneurial and authoritarian tactics employed by active financial states, as stated by Albers, continue to drive and expand the real estate markets. Though there have been societal movements and protests, they have yet to significantly challenge the underlying principles of these large-scale projects in neglected and informal urban neighborhoods. What we see as path-breaking trajectories of change in Istanbul is that to address top-down interventions that threaten local planning and neighborhood dynamics, entrepreneurial communities are emerging, especially in these areas, confronting state-led property-driven regeneration processes. So these self-organized community initiatives skillfully navigate multiple spatial interventions through entrepreneurial strategies. Although do not appear as progressive political movements, these self-organized initiatives repoliticize the residents who are involved in policy networks. In an ongoing work with Ebru, we look deeper into how the combination of strict regulations and flexible planning decisions transform these community actors to behave like property developers in a way once vulnerable and disempowered communities mimic tactics of the market and political strategies of the public actors to find their own way in this complex urban puzzle. In 2012, disaster law was issued in Turkey with the purpose of dealing with natural disasters. However, it has also been used as a legal tool of the state to enable two centralized institutions, the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization and TOKİ, the Mass Housing Authority I mentioned before, to merge and become the sole authority for spatial development and all kinds of interventions. These authorities have used the law's provision for designing disaster areas at their discretion. This has facilitated several projects, renewal projects, including the Derbent and Fikirtepe cases that we used in this paper and also in other works. The disaster law brings some compulsory flexibilities in property rights in these former squatter areas, because according to this law, a two-thirds majority of landowners is considered sufficient for decision-making, and if this is not met, urgent expropriation may be used in the public interest. In fact, with this rule, compelled property owners to reconcile their differing views within a constrained decision-making framework. It created divisions between those in favor of property sales and those opposed, intensifying the challenge of reaching a consensus. In this very tense and complex setting, the two-third majority rule significantly influenced the urban regeneration trajectory, putting individual property rights against community preferences, affecting neighborhood cohesion. When we look at the citizens' entrepreneurial actions, what we see is several dynamics. First of all, we see emerging entrepreneurial agency of property owners responding to urban changes. These owners showcase several behavioral patterns. They followed strategic choices in negotiations and bargaining. They use also fusions of property ownership with entrepreneurial instincts, highlighted dynamic adaptability and resourcefulness as a behavior pattern. We also see emerging community politics where property owners actively participated in these policy networks, influencing the decision-making mechanisms, especially with the introduction of the two-thirds voting system, empowered them to shape the project's course, but also give them space to negotiate within the community. So they put collaborative efforts such as collective negotiations and resistance to selling, showcased a community political entrepreneurial stance within their community. The third dynamic we came across is collective agency in urban transformation. Basically, our empirical findings emphasize the influential role of collective agency in shaping urban regeneration in these neighborhoods. Alignment with like-minded property owners, basically property owners, of course, referring to these residents, strengthening their ability to negotiate and influence the outcomes. They also use several legal tools in response to several challenges that they come across. Property owners utilize legal tools like filing actions, petitions, complaints when facing challenges and dissatisfaction. They also followed legal strategies aimed to safeguard property rights, highlighting responses to the reshaping urban landscape. So basically, the fieldwork, especially Ebru conducted in Istanbul in these neighborhoods, did not show a very passive behavior of the owners, residents in these areas. On the contrary, very active engagement with policy networks that they had to deal with and negotiate with. Coming to the conclusions, our research shows that despite being oppressed and discouraged from protesting, residents have organized themselves to participate in policy networks. Their capacity for self-governance is crucial, particularly in an entrepreneurial environment, to repoliticize these networks in which inhabitants are often excluded from the decision-making processes, even within an authoritarian context that this takes place. However, what we also conclude is that citizens are not just passive victims of urban transformation projects. They respond to such projects by displaying certain characteristics such as willingness to prioritize their individual interests and recognize the potential for financial gains without actually feeling bad about it. In addition, we also show that studying cases that accommodate contradictions such as authoritarian but entrepreneurial, overregulated but flexible, oppressed and discouraged but repoliticized cases can offer transformative governance practices for international academic research. So we should not stereotype the residents' perspectives and behavioral patterns as vulnerable victims. The Istanbul case highlights the need for further exploration of how self-organization can flourish even under institutionalized authoritarianism by deconstructing diverse trajectories in spatial governance processes. Of course, we are not judgmental. We don't say this is positive or negative, but this is something different than the social movements, classic social movements that we know in our work. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Tuna. And I think we'll go to our next speaker today. Azadeh Mashayekhi is a lecturer at the Bartlett Development Planning Unit, where she convenes the DPU Research Cluster on Urban Transformations. Her ongoing research investigates the political economy of urban change and the role of the state in urban development in the context of Middle Eastern studies. I'm not reading all bios, they're all available in the packet of the conference for the sake of time. She will be presenting her presentation titled Revolutionary Islamic Organizations and Land Ownership Conflicts in Tehran.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank AUB and City Debates organizing team, and particularly Mona Harb and Mona Fawaz for inviting me to participate in this conference. City Debates is really close to my heart, and I've learned so much from City Debates throughout the years, so it's a great honor and a privilege to really be part of this conference today and yesterday. And I'm really happy to share with you some of my ongoing research on Tehran. So the title of this presentation is Islamic Revolutionary Organizations and Land Ownership Conflicts in Peri-Urban Area of Tehran. Unfortunately, I can't present the urban case, so initially in my title was in urban and peripheral urban areas, but because of the length of the presentation, I'm just presenting a case at the peripheral areas. This is a work that I've been doing now for some time with my colleague Wafa Diyanati, based at UCL, and a good friend and colleague Iman Waqefi, who is an independent researcher and urban activist based in Tehran. So throughout the 20th century, there has been an ongoing conflict between state and religious institutions over land. Since the 1920s, with the formation of the modern state in Iran, the military monarch Reza Shah, with the help of the nationalist elites and landlord class, implemented a series of reforms to reduce the status of the Shia ulama within the judiciary and their involvement in the administration and management of land endowments, waqf. The broad objective of these reforms was to limit the economic and political power of Shia clergies within Iranian society. The 1929 reform of the legal system and the 1934 endowment law, which granted the government to manage endowment affairs and integrated the waqf organization within the state apparatus, were among the first interventions that led to major dissent by Shia clerics. These acts were followed by the implementation of the land reform policy to limit private ownership of large tracts of land. However, the policy had a bigger impact on waqf land rather than on the properties of big landlords who had closer ties with the Pahlavi government. Consequently, the 1960s land reforms increased the antagonism towards the Pahlavi regime by the Shia ulama. And to date, many argued that the land reform was one of the factors that triggered the Islamic Revolution, as Khomeini was the leader of the opposition leader against the land reform. After 1979, multiple strategies were deployed by Ayatollah Khomeini to reclaim and expand the political and economic power of Shia clergies nationwide and beyond. So in this paper, we want to show how the formation of revolutionary Islamic charitable organization by Khomeini reestablished the political and economic power of Shia clergies through the question of land and property ownership. Moreover, we show how these organizations interfere in land politics and are involved in land ownership and appropriation of conflict. We argue that despite distributive claims, these organizations are actively participating in speculative land practices and have ambiguous and intertwined relationships with multiple actors within and outside the state that are involved in the land ownership conflicts. In the aftermath of the 1979 revolution, the Shia clerics and radical Islamists, despite their supreme position within the constitution, did not fully trust the state bureaucracy or the institutions that they inherited from the previous regime. Only a few months after the revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini and his followers aimed to find new ways to institutionalize Islamic ideology and consolidate their authority. They initiated new mechanisms to generate and distribute resources, as well as dismantle the former power structure that persisted in the new government. New revolutionary institutions, labeled as charitable foundations, were formed to parallel the state machinery and quickly fill the power vacuum. Hence, the organizations took control over the confiscated wealth and property of the royal family and the assets of landowners and industrialists who fled the country. With the significant assets they acquired, these organizations in the past decades have played a critical role in shaping urbanization and transferring public land into private hands, including poor lower-income communities and private developers. Within the redistribution process, these organizations acquired considerable resources and political power, turning them into dominant actors in the land market deeply entangled with land grabbing and confiscation activities legitimized by Islamic values and principles of social justice and equity. Here, basically, it's a short. There are many of these foundations, but these are among the most powerful charitable foundations that established post-revolution. And until today, they exist, and they are big players in various sectors. But I'm focusing on the foundation for the oppressed, who are largely invested in the construction sector and property and real estate market. So after the revolution, the nationalization of land and fair redistribution among poor and low-income groups became a political act supported by all political factions. Yet the Islamic revolutionary forces sought to transform urban land ownership patterns based on Islamic principles regarding the possession of wealth and ownership. According to Islamic values, the ultimate ownership of land is with God. People are simply guardians of public trust, and ownership should be limited for the welfare of the public. Hence, land is not recognized as the particular property of anyone, and only people's work on the land implies private ownership rights. This basic ethos of Islamic law provided a firm legal framework for the Islamic Republic and newly established revolutionary foundations to acquire large amount of vacant, undeveloped, and abandoned land without compensation. With this approach, the revolutionary organizations parallel to state institutions such as the Ministry of Housing or Agriculture, and municipalities took possession of land belonging to big landlords and the royal family, and played a significant role in the massive transfer of public land into private hands, including those of private developers and contractors. So the spontaneous and unregulated land invasions by revolutionary organizations and the arbitrary appropriation and distribution of land contributed extensively to the peripheral urbanization of Tehran and the transformation of hundreds of townships and villages outside Tehran's city boundaries. By the 1990s, the fantasy of egalitarian urbanism that was presented to people post-1979 revolution turned into a socio-spatial catastrophe characterized by rapid population growth, lack of basic infrastructure and services, unemployment and poverty. Today, the metropolitan region of Tehran comprises 27 cities, 237 towns, and 94 villages across 9 counties. In this paper, I show the case of land ownership conflict and involvement of the foundation of the oppressed in one of these peripheral towns, which later turned into an urban area and a city located at the eastern periphery of Tehran. So Ozuntepe, which is a district within the Wuhan city, located 60 kilometers east of Tehran, which Wuhan granted the city boundary and became an urban area officially in 1990s. Wuhan has 100,000 inhabitants, and according to the latest statistics in 2011, there were 500 inhabitants in the district of Ozuntepe. You see it with the red line around the land on the map, which that's the area that I'm going to talk about, which is all these 5,000 inhabitants are illegal occupiers and informal settlers. So the land was owned by Jewish landowner Lutfullah Hay, and due to its topographic features, so it's a hilly land, was exempted from land reforms in the 1960s and remained under private ownership until the 1979 revolution, when the land, along with other private properties owned by the landlord, was confiscated by the foundation of the oppressed. The land remained untouched by the foundation while it went through phases of occupation by different groups. The major land grab and invasion occurred in the 1990s after the construction of major highway connecting the Wuhan city, this small town, to Tehran, and as a result, all townships, including Wuhan, along the newly built highway faced rapid growth and transformation. So Ozuntepe land gained value from infrastructure development in the 1990s and the population growth of Wuhan and neighboring townships. The rise of the land value and the official declaration of Wuhan as an urban area attracted the interest of the foundation, small developers, the municipality, and other governing institutions that are responsible for monitoring construction, service delivery, and protecting ownership boundaries. As a result, first and foremost, conflict was raised between foundation and municipality and other actors, especially the occupiers of the land, illegal occupiers of the land. In response to municipality intervention in protecting the boundaries of land development, the foundation of the oppressed constructed a peripheral road around the hill to demarcate its ownership boundaries and confronted the municipality with the idea of transforming the land into a leisure and green zone for the city, which is lacking green open spaces. With this narrative, the foundation pushed for eviction and relocation of informal settlements and refused to recognize the ownership rights of occupying residents. The occupation of land involves three different groups: farmers occupiers who occupied the land since 1960s and they've been there for many years, and non-resident small developers who are just see the opportunity in the past, let's say, past 10-15 years to occupy the land for future developments, and impoverished squatters and poor land occupiers. The relationship between these groups and municipality and the foundation of Oppress, as well as Friday Prayer Imam, is very complex and intertwined. For example, the foundation interacts with non-resident occupiers, the small developers, through some financial transactions or by utilizing their privileges of knowing other residents to evade the foundation's pressures. On the other hand, non-resident occupiers either view resident occupiers as rivals to be defeated and evicted, or they establish cooperative relationships, utilizing them as informants and messengers for their own benefit. There is evidence that the foundation donated a parcel of land to Friday Prayer Imam to mediate and persuade squatters and occupiers through alternative land provision. On the other hand, the foundation and municipality are simultaneously in conflict and coalition over maximizing their interests. The examination of correspondence documents between the municipality and the foundation of Oppressed reveals that due to the foundation's ownership of extensive lands in the region, the municipality issues extensive permits for land use change to the foundation to obtain land in other areas and maximize its revenue. On the other hand, the foundation transfers some urban lands to the municipality as a gesture to compensate the municipality for overlooking the foundation's unauthorized activities. In the absence of any activist civil society organizations and grassroots movements, the squatters and occupiers come together during Friday prayers, religious festivals, and ceremonies to advance their interests, resist discrimination, and make claims. In this case, the Friday Prayer Imam played an important role in passing the claims and needs of the occupiers to the municipality and up to the district governor. And eventually in 2021, by the involvement of the district governor and scaling up the case to bigger, higher government levels, the Foundation of the Oppressed agreed to recognize the land ownership rights of some of the occupiers, which is an ongoing case, and we are digging deeper into that to understand what are the legal processes that are coming out of this new recent agreement in the last 2 years. So by looking at the case of Uzun Tepe, we see the involvement of the Foundation of Oppress in multiple forms of land-related practices, be it from land confiscation, property confiscation, land expropriation, land bartering, transfer of development rights, and land use change. So, and in each case, we see that the way in which the Foundation adopts different positions and behavior in relation to the municipality or small developers. So they are constantly basically juggling and changing position in relation to these different actors. So there is no one single mechanism or approach that we see, or the position that this foundation is taking in relation to the conflict or negotiation process. So by looking at the case of Ozon Tepe, it became important for us to understand and recognize the interactions between multiple actors who are involved in land conflict in different levels. So we started to kind of try to understand what are the some of the characteristics of these actors, what are the power relations, what are some of the overlapping interests between these actors, such as the foundation and the municipality or the private developers. And then in parallel, there are relationship with the judiciary, Waqf organization, the mosque and Friday prayer imam. So there is a very entangled, complex web of actors who are involved in these processes. So speaking of the interactions and web of institutions and actors who are involved in land conflict, or let's say generally in real estate market and land market. Here is the just to show the organizational chart of the Foundation of the Oppressed, with the multiple holding companies and contractors that are registered with the foundation, and they operate under the institutional, let's say, organizational chart of the foundation, and they are active in multiple sites and projects and areas, not only in Tehran, across the country. Here, it's very small, I'm sorry, but I kind of, you can see also that the variety of organizations that are also connected to the foundation of the oppressed, or the foundation is connected to them. There are banks that are operating in direct relationship with the foundation. They have links to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and Ministry of Defense, and all the way to the Supreme Leader. So for us, it becomes more and more interesting that we want to dig deeper in some of the relationship between, for example, these holding companies and banks, with certain development projects or real estate projects that are happening in different parts of the country, and especially in Tehran, which is the area of our research. So how to dig deeper and really understand the mechanisms that they are operating within the property market, which hopefully can maybe also contribute to the broader, more general theoretical discussion about who is governing the city, or also rethinking the role of the state in urban development processes. So finally, some quick remarks. Maybe it's a little bit of repetition, but the Foundation of our Press has an ambiguous and intertwined relationship with multiple actors in different levels within and outside of the state. And at the same time, with the very powerful political and economic position that it has, one would expect, for example, in the case of Ozon Tepe, that this foundation could easily do the forced eviction or forced relocation of the occupiers, and the foundation didn't do that. And then they start to have these multiple rounds of negotiations and finding other ways and mechanism, or to push them out in different ways. Indirect ways, let's say. So in a way, the foundation is in this constant negotiation and deal making with various actors at different levels, which we found it interesting to kind of like dig into and find out more about this constant vertical, horizontal relationship that they are having with different groups and institutions and actors. Thirdly, for us in our research, it became very interesting to also recognize these collective religious practices of the occupiers for advancing their interest and resist discrimination and make claims. We thought, in a way, it's perhaps this has the space to kind of be studied more and maybe conceptualized more to find out what are these religious practices that leads to certain insurgencies in these cases. And lastly, the entrepreneurial approach of the municipality was almost shocking, the way that they are involved in some of these in these contestations and conflicts, with almost no safeguarding of the public interest. So I'm looking for, this is it. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Azadeh. Very interesting stuff. I think we'll go to our next speaker from China, with also an interesting presentation with different type of dynamics. Zhigang Li is a professor of urban studies and planning at the School of Urban Design, Wuhan University, China. He works on urban transformation of China with a focus on neighborhoods, migration, health, and governance. The title of his presentation is Anyway, you can read it there, and the making of new Wuhan. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, my name is Zhigang Li. Thank you for the chair and thank you for City Debates for this opportunity to share with you our recent studies on financialization in the making of the new Wuhan. This study was conducted with my colleague Luan Xiaofan, also from Wuhan University. This is the outline of this study. Our study will focus on 3 cases of Wuhan to conduct an empirical study. First of all, introduction. I think the high concern of planetary urbanization, especially in terms of large-scale urbanization in China. China's urbanization rate increased from about 40% in 1980s to about 64% in recent years. In every year, there are about 20 million Chinese come into cities from rural areas. But how about the actual existing process of financialized city making in China still remain a question, particularly the ways in which local governments become embedded within or interacted with the financial system need to be further explored. Most literature target on Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, few about inland Chinese cities such as Wuhan, where we studying and living. In terms of the literature, most literature concern about financialization has become a significant phenomena across different countries. A lot of literature shed light upon the linkage between financial capital, urban transformation, or spatial fix, say urban redevelopment, has very much enhanced in the last decades. And also, the state plays an active role during the process across different countries. However, the gap is external literature rarely specifies how exactly local stories are shaped by the interaction of various actors, and most studies of financialization focus on developed Western countries, few on the global South, global East, such as post-reform China. of course, there are also a lot of studies on China's rising bank system, financial institutions, especially their relations with urban development, such as the new housing market developed since the 1980s. The financial stimulus package, especially the Chengtou, the urban investment company of China. It's articulated in the literature that urban financialization in China is a land-centered process largely actualized through local financing platforms, say Chengtou, which is actually a specific type of local state-owned enterprises, SOE, help local government to get access to financial resources and so on. So Chengtou actually is accompanied by enlarged debts of local governments, and which is a very recent issue in China. However, unlike other contexts, China's urban regime is marked by state entrepreneurism, as put by Fulong Wu of UCL. Say, the government use market instruments as a tool to extend the state's position into market sphere, maintain state power, rather than being replaced by market power. State power is reinforced by its use of market tools. Local governments resort to speculative property development and competitive place promotion to generate land revenues, yet all urban lands are controlled by its spatial planning system. In particularly, urban planning in China today is also undergoing a transformation from traditional urban planning to so-called territorial spatial planning. Planning and financialization thus have been closely interacted. However, there is also some gaps. The active process in terms of the interactions between planning system and urban financialization is not yet understood. So to address these gaps, so we look at Wuhan, the city where we are working and studying, which is also the capital city of central China, with a huge size of 8,000 square kilometer and more than 10 million population. It was titled as Oriental Chicago in history, and then become the center of heavy industry of China, marketed by state-owned enterprises and so on. So in recent years, it's also undergoing a new transformation to be upgraded to a creative sector or service sector center and so on. In 2020, it suffered the pandemic of COVID-19, obviously. Our study targets on two main facets. First, the plan serves the local governments to achieve its goals. The second is the ways in which planning serves the local government to suit financial interests or markets. Our study is mainly include interviews, case studies, fieldworks we conducted around 2019. Basically, Wuhan is in the same vein as other large Chinese cities. In the 1980s, there are huge urban crises to maintain its urban system, especially infrastructure system. So in earlier 2000, Wuhan started to implement more entrepreneurial governance in which financialization is taken as a way to fund infrastructure and related services to upgrade, renew urban space, and importantly, to achieve planning aims. So we will look at three study cases, three new and recent projects of the city, Zhongshan Avenue, East Lake Greenway, and RBD. So most of these projects are conducted and organized by Wuhan's Chengtou, the Wuhan Real Estate Group. As put in the website of the Wuhan Chengtou, this company has implemented more than 700 infrastructure projects, and which involve about 300 billion Chinese yuan of investment and so on. So this is a map of Wuhan. We can see our 3 sites of case study cover the central city. The first one is Zhongshan Avenue, which is a historical site developed, constructed in the 1920s. In around 2014 and 2016, the local government decided to redevelop this area to regain prosperity and improve people's livelihood. As you can see in the slide, the image of the result of the redevelopment. The second case is so-called East Lake Greenway. Almost at the same time as last project, this Greenway system is a so-called flagship project to demonstrate Wuhan's upgrade to better amenities and more happiness. So basically it includes the construction of about 22 kilometers bicycle lanes, together with a lot of new facilities, sports, recreation, and so on, according to the plan. So the question is, how did the local government fund this project? What's the actual process of financializing underlying these constructions? To answer these questions, we need to focus on 2 issues: the construction institution and its funding system, as put in this figure in the slide. In order to build new space and infrastructure, the Wuhan's Real Estate Group, so say the Chengtou, use state-owned assets such as land and infrastructure to acquire loans from banks or markets, as we can see in the figure. Most of the fundings for these 2 projects were collected through a specific mode of urban financing way, so-called project land package, as you can see in the middle of the figure, which include 2 steps. The first is land packaging and the second is land financing. So we can see in the image. First, the land packaging is a top-down process reverse to the bonding of the spatial construction projects at one site with the selling of land at other side, in the middle of the figure. So this arrangement is normally set by local governments at the start of every year, according to the planning of the planning department underlying Wuhan municipal government. So the urban land and planning departments seek appropriate lands across the city to balance the investment, largely through the packaging of selected land within this project. That is, these plots are selected as the targets of future development. See in the figure, we can see the four plots of land. The estimated selling and profits of which are expected to balance the spending of Zhongshan Avenue and East Lake Greenway. So in this way, the packaged land would be financialized when linked with specific constructions. So during the process, planning play a key role, because it's planning select the slots, the plots for future development to and also planning will involve the increase in the floor area ratio, changing the function of the selected plots, and other ways of land manipulation in the process. Therefore, with the help of Chengtou, the local government act as both land seller and infrastructure builder. So the second step is land financing, reverse to the way in which Chengtou get loans from financial markets, banks, or trust institutions, as you can see in the red color of the figure. The Chengtou resort to other route to financial resources, the mortgaging of so-called primary land development right. In fact, these so-called primary land development rights are often used as mortgage to access finances on the market before 2016. Anyway, through this way of state entrepreneurism, the two contradictory forces of state regulation and market instrument have been assembled together. The Wuhan get a successful implementation of the two projects. The third case is so-called RBD, which was a train assembly factory in history in Wuhan. In around 2014, the local government decided to redevelop this region into the Riverside Business District for the city. The local government actually decided to involve itself directly in the making of RBD, and however, still through the help of Chengtou. So in 2016, Wuhan government authorized the so-called Wuhan 2049 Investment and Development Ltd, say 2040 ID, at Chengtou under the control of the Planning Bureau of Wuhan to be its delegate for this project. So basically, as a representative of the local government, 2040 ID has been mainly responsible for two phases of RBD construction: financing the infrastructure system and making it a cluster of advanced financial sectors. So to achieve these goals, so in 2016, the 2049 ID set up joint companies with other market investors, say CITIC Pacific and China Construction Set Engineering Bureaus, to set up a new company, Wuhan Riverside Infrastructure Development Ltd, and so on. So above all, in order to implement its strategic plan, the local government actively mobilized the finance, construction, and involvement of various companies and agencies for RBD. As a result, RBD was actually constructed, and also a lot of banks, brokerages, insurance companies has been accumulated at RBD. The strategic plan of Wuhan has been achieved. So some conclusions and discussions. On one hand, I think our study indicated the close relationship between planning aims and the financialization of urban spaces in post-reform China. Through the application of market tools such as financialization, together with government arrangement and planning, Wuhan's local government successfully upgraded its space infrastructure and also part of the sectors. It also articulates various effects of financialization as well as public debts. Actually, today, Wuhan was somehow ranked quite high on the list of China's cities with urban debts. Wuhan has become relatively a typical debt machine. The financialization of the built environment therefore could also be detrimental to Wuhan's long-term development. I think that's all our comments and understanding of the financialization in the making of the new Wuhan. This study has also been published in 2020 in land use policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. I think we'll go to our last case study from Morocco with Maryame Amarouche, is Associate Professor of Spatial Planning and Urban Development at the University Jean Moulin, Lyon 3. Her research focuses on planning and urban policies in peripheral areas. The title of the presentation is Thinking the City Region from the Periphery, Spatial and Political Reconfiguration in Morocco.
Hi everyone, my name is Maryame Amarouche. I'm a lecturer on urban planning at University of Lyon. And first of all, I would like to thank all the organizers for making this conference happen. And thank you, Mona, for inviting me to taking part to the conference. So this research I'm going to present to you today is a part of several individual and group research projects between 2014 and 2023. It is mostly qualitative research in the crossroad of urban studies, geography, political sciences, and I mostly used semi-structured interviews with local technical actors and representatives, also at the prefectural and regional level, and I also had some interviews with ministries and state agencies. I had also interviews with urban planner and technical consultancies, and of course public and private real estate developer. I also used urban planning documents, and in this presentation I will talk a bit about municipal urban planning document. So this research is based on fieldwork in Morocco, specifically Rabat, which is the city capital, and I studied municipalities outside Rabat administrative limits. So I focused on municipalities in the prefecture of Schirat Mera and the three municipalities, El Menja, which is developed mostly through gated communities for upper middle class population, Enauda, which is a small municipality with a lot of public houses, public land, and also public houses, and well known for being the place where slum dwellers are replaced, and also the rural municipality of Sidi Hia Zair, where a new city had been implemented. So here we have, concerning the literature, as I was working mostly on the politics of urban sprawl, I also used the work on the diffusion of the urban, and also the work of Brenner about the planetary urbanization. I used also all the literature at the international level about the massive urbanization, and in Morocco there is a huge literature about the municipal peripheries, the urbanization, political transformation, etc. And so it's the work of Aziz al-Iraqi, Mohammed Tamim, Tariq Haroud, and also different academic literature on spatial segregation, for example, the work of Naved Bouchanin about spatial fragmentation, the work of Nora Smoud about marginalization of space, and also all the work made by Christiana Strava about the political restructuration in the margins. So here the question I'm asking is, what does the urbanization of peripheral municipalities tells us about the configuration of the state in the context of global urbanization. So here are three parts. First of all, I will examine the tension between expansion and control as in the heart of urban politics in Morocco. Also, how this conquest of the peripheries is mostly made by major public projects, and then we'll try to discuss the instrument and the renewing of the instrument and the political control. So first of all, this question of expansion and control is really linked to the history of urban planning in Morocco, which is mostly modernly developed through the control of the colonial power. So here the planning document is used to control the population and control the space and participate to the colonial expansion of the French power in Morocco. This document had been used in the Moroccan context before being used in the French context for urban planning of cities. And so the work of Janet Aboulougad is really telling. She worked about Rabat, so the city capital, the capital of the colonial power, where urban planning documents are also used in order to concentrate the indigenous people, the Moroccans, in the Medina, and use the urban planning document in order to expand the colonial city, which make a racial segregation. So the urban apartheid, and then after during the post-colonial period, this racial separation had been transformed into class-based spatial segregation. So, to say so, I tried to find other events in the contemporary history of Morocco where we could see how this planning document and how the intervention of in the urban is still used as a way to control population and space. And so here you maybe know that during the 60s and the 90s, Morocco was faced different political instability, and also big cities in Morocco received a lot of people coming from rural area for working. Casablanca was well known because it was one of the biggest industrial city. But then this population, this urban population, was really stressful, let's say it like this, for the king, for the King Hassan II, and its political supports. And so the city began to be really militarized. So the different event led by the students event, the worker event, and also all the riots around the political adjustment program policies had been had a strongly military response by the power, but at the same time also the power used like intervention into informal areas, intervention into slums in order to create housing, in order to create infrastructure, in order to de-densify and calm down the population. Also, the way that city had been designed was part to this desire of control. In Rabat, the city capital, was also using this kind of tools in order to securize this place, which is the city of the power, the city of the royal power. And so here we have the case of the Green Belt. The Green Belt had been implemented in the 1980s, and you can see the picture. There is a mirador in the middle of this ceinture verte. The ceinture verte had been created between Rabat and Temera in order to close the boundaries around Rabat. Like you can see in the map, there is two valleys that separate Rabat from Salé and Rabat from the hinterland. And here the Green Belt came to close this area and create a distinction between Rabat, the city capital, correctly managed, and the municipality outside these limits, where in the 1980s, a lot of the urbanization was more and more important, and in Salé as in Temara, it was mostly through informal houses. So here there is some studies about the political sciences studies that show that if Hassan II was a more rural king. You have here the book of Rémy Levaux, the Fellah, which is the farmer, as a defendant of the throne. Muhammad VI, the new king, the current king, was more a urban king. So here, if Hassan II was really distant with the urban and has political base in the rural area, the new king invests a lot in the city. It invests a lot, not only politically, but also as a businessman, well known here in Morocco and all around the world for its business activities. And so different projects had been put in place in the city in order to make the city shine, in order to make the city participate to the international competition. And thanks to different projects, different urban projects. Here you can see I Love Rabat. When you go outside in the door of Rabat Airport, or the project to renew the big train station all around the country. So then the conquest of the periphery is really also massive in this period of the new king arrival. So here there is a politic of social housing construction. So if during before the 80s, the housing production had been controlled by the state, little by little, since the 80s and the structural adjustment program, that these programs increased neoliberal housing policies, and the arrival to the new king and the beginning of the 2000s reinforced this neoliberal housing policy by using through its action, the state guides the demand and the supply. Thanks to public land, sold for low price to a private company in order to build the houses, tax credits, and all the regulation, the favorable regulation. All this structured a market with the lucrative benefits. So real estate developers, they get land for a few price and different tax credit, and in exchange, they create middle-class affordable housing and slum dweller housing in order to relocate slum dweller outside the city. The new town is part of this project, of this policy, because it creates an areas where this private investment are supported also by public investment in order to massively build houses, social houses, but then also affordable houses and current price houses. So here we could see how this is a driver of private investment, and how what Brenner and Theodore analyzed as public finance secures private investment. Then different other projects in the 2000s, when the king arrived to the power, linked this center and peripheries. So cities without slums are connected with the creation of the new cities outside the new cities in the peripheral municipality, where slum dwellers are moved, and this free land, thanks to cities without slum, is used to create a huge mega project. Like you can see here, this picture is from a project in the valley of Bourg-et-Grec between Rabat and Salé, and in this area they created a new marina. They created also houses for upper middle class. They created this huge building and different also theater, operas, etc., and museum. And also that was linked with different other small projects in all the city of Rabat. Here you have the project of waterfront in Rabat. Then this led to place branding for the city capital in order to change the image of the city. The city of Rabat is well known for being administrative capital, but a bit the boring capital face to Casablanca or other big cities. So here it's also a way to change the image. But this link between center and peripheries make also actors not only in academia being critical because of the construction of kind of new ghettos or kind of peripheralization of people outside the limit of the city, and if this new area are really space of life or only new ghettos. So here, the new towns are really relevant in this capacity from this policy put in place by the state actor in order to urbanize the peripheries and concentrate the urbanization in specific area. So here you have the picture of the city of Tamesna, which is implemented in an important perimeter. And if at the beginning of the program in 2004 there was not a lot of real estate developer interest, little by little the interest come and the price of the land became more and more important, and a lot of real estate developer, international and Moroccan ones, had been attracted. The problem is the state is not monolithic, and they in the urban urban development there is different actors involved, and also tension between the different state ministries. So the new city of Tamesna is mostly developed by the Ministry of Houses, in opposition to the Ministry of Urbanism, which was against this kind of urban sprawl. But just few kilometers far from Doha, and this also shows why all this real estate developer finally get interested by the new city. It's also because the peripheries became a really space of capital investment and capital renewal. And so here, just close to the city of Tamesna, the new city of Madinat Al Firdaus had been implemented by a private company named Doha. Doha is known by being really close to the king, to the royal family. Here, just to show you some images of this new town, and so you could see that there is a lot of different construction. There is a mosque, there is a different affordable houses, and also some villa, and also some plot for self-built houses. So here we have a project, a private project developed by the king's by a private real estate company close to the king, which arrived in competition to a new town developed by the state itself. And so here we have also the problem, like you can see it, of an environment that seems out of control, and there is a lack of waste treatment. This is explained, by the way, that this kind of projects are not really discussed with local actors, and even they are discussed and accepted by local actors. Municipalities where they are implemented are mostly rural municipalities with a few finance and a few technical stuff. So they are not really able to absorb that kind of urbanization and led to situation like this. So go for this final part here about the instrument. When I studied urban sprawl, a lot of people was talking about informal houses as the reason of the sprawl, etc., etc. And also that urban planning documents are not really powerful in order to control the urbanization. Here, what appears is that mostly urban public programs that are massive programs and that make this document being less powerful. But here, in the case of Rabat, really close to the city capital, we have a specific case where the planning document is a bit powerful. It's a bit powerful because there is a political and technical leadership that make it being powerful, and so it shows how much this document are political document and not only technical. El Menza is close to Swissy. Swissy is a neighborhood where the royal family is, where the elite of Morocco is. So a lot of these people have land in El Menza, and so when the city of El Menza became interested for urbanization, these people make the urban document, the urban planning document, connect with their interest. So here we have doctors, lawyer, minister, former minister, and people really connect to the royal family that makes that negotiate in order to have a planning document that open to urbanization, but not too much. So we could densify, but only thanks to gated communities. And this gated communities, the price is mostly for upper middle class population. So we can see how local political actors in favor of peri-urban development and technical actors satisfied by upper middle class urbanization get along with the influential landowner which have the ability to take control of urban planning tools and make it happen. Then another huge transformation is the way that we could see a recentralization of power. If urban planning tools could be not that strong in the major case, we could see how, thanks to agencies, the state re-centralize, take the power and make and create agencies in order to manage the most important project. So here we have an agency for the Bourg-et-Grec Valley project, which is an agency which have a lot of autonomous financial possibilities, political possibilities, urbanistic tools are all between the hand of the agency. The creation also of a regional agency in the context of decentralization in order to manage urban project at the regional scale, and the historically urban agencies created in the 1980s in order to control the urbanization process at the prefectural level. So here we have what the French political scientist Renaud Epstein, a kind of government from afar. So the state is not present by itself, but by creating that kind of agency, it recentralized the decision in a small agency that he could control. So to conclude, we have here the diffusion of sprawl make us question the instrument and the institution. So we're thinking control of space and population from the center, thanks to national programs like Cities Without Slums, New Towns, etc., and some agencies like Rabat Région Aménagement, l'Agence d'aménagement de la vallée du Bourg-et-Grec, what shows a strong center-periphery dynamic. It is not true everywhere, but it's particularly true in the context of Rabat, which is the capital, and where the national and royal power are centralized. In terms of also interest, peripheries are areas where capital are renewed, and that crystallized tension and interest. That also makes us question the role of public actors, and mostly the state. So urban planning is therefore not just a technical issue. For example, how we do densification, for whom, for what type of building is important. So building villas, like in El Menza, is not the same that building social housing or concentrate social housing like in Ain Auda or the new towns. Also, in terms of idea, it's also a conceptualization of the diffusion of the urban, cannot ignore this political and spatial reconfiguration, which relate also to the spatial justice, because the diffusion of the urban is also made through a population displacement, disposition of land, marginalization of some rural practices and social organization, and and that question also an exclusive form of urban modernity. And finally, it shows how much state is not it's not monolithic, and there is inside this name of state different kind of actor, different interests, different ministry goals, etc., and what appears in the comparison of the Hassan II period, for example, that here the power is more porous to private interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all our speakers. I think with this final presentation, we can open the session for questions. I think we need to wait for our participants to appear, right? Okay.
Okay. Can we ask to unmute? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all live and moving rather than hiding behind your presentations. Thank you for very, very inspiring presentations with nicely divergent case studies. I would like to open it up for our audience for questions, and then hopefully we can close. And I think we have around 25 minutes for this. Okay, Dr. Harib.
Hello, everyone. Really nice to meet the people I don't know, and hello to Azadeh. We miss you being with us. Thanks very much for your very insightful contributions. I think the panel is complementary in a very rich way, so thank you very much for engaging with us on these important case studies. I wanted to actually solicit your input on a question you did not address, but I'm sure you have stories on, and I know we don't have much time on it, but financialization of land also is, I mean, to echo the theme of city debates, is a huge disruption on the built environment and also the unbuilt environment, and I think what you talked about highlighted that very well. I'm very curious to hear you tell us a little bit about the possible resistances and protests against these disruptions that you may have encountered, even if you did not study them or if you did not work on them. But I'm curious to hear you on what were people's reactions to these violent acts against their lived environment and livelihoods. Thank you.
Our speakers, maybe we could start with some replies to this challenging question, and then we'll take some more questions as we move on. Maryame, you're muted.
I was just wondering if the other presenter would start, but I can start. I didn't talk about the Protestants because my presentation was really focused on political actors and technical actors, and but sure, there is a Protestant against this kind of disposition. I shortly speak about, even my presentation was not focused on it. So here we have urbanization is real. There's a lot of interest. Sure, there is this the state actors and real estate developers really present in this transaction, but also in small landowner are also participating to this urbanization, and see it, for some of them, the one who have land, see it as a possibility to improve their quality of life. So here we have the urbanization also as an opportunity, and I didn't talk about it that much, but it is present, and mostly in rural area in Morocco. Then you have really situation of dispossessions of people who has no land to sell, and these people are rejecting firstly in the city center, and then when they arrived at the peripheral area, they faced really a change of their everyday life. So for example, I was talking about the projet d'aménagement de la vallée du Bourg-et-Grec, it's a huge mega project with so a lot of people had been removed from this area, which was peripheral but really well connected, and they had been removed to a municipality like Ain Aouda. In the Vallée du Bourg-et-Grec, for example, a lot of them had a small agricultural practice, and so they're living thanks to this activity. But when they had been removed to Ain Aouda, they were sent into a small apartment, and the area is seen as being urban, so their agricultural activities are not allowed anymore. So here we could we had seen some resistance, and so people are still managing that small apartment and use the unused land around them in order to continue these activities not allowed in this new place. So you have, and that was really interesting for me when I was thinking about the diffusion of the urban, when sometimes we could like confront urban and rural, and here we see the mix, the resistance by that kind of mix, which technical actor and political actor are also are trying to avoid, in order to have a really like urbanized, modernly urbanized area. But that kind of example I have in mind, but I didn't really studied this.
Anyone would like to add to this question?
I can try. In my context, we just started to kind of look into that different forms of resistance. Of course, it varies in different cases, but I want to also kind of refer back to the presentation of Tuna, that in the case of Iran, there are some similarities with Turkey, that let's say the residents or landowners, or in this case that I presented, the occupiers are not purely passive. So there's no, let's say, victimization in the sense that we say they are all victims of these processes. There are small movements, or in the case of more inner city areas, things like petitions or trying to get engaged in a more direct way with the municipality. In the peripheries, the example I showed, people are using spaces of mosques or relationship with the neighbors through these collective ceremonies as a coming together to mobilize. But at the same time, let's say the powerful actors like these foundations or the state, they have their own mechanisms to kind of like divide. And in the case of Iran, it's very complicated. So people are very insecure and they don't trust each other because they feel like, oh, someone from the state is in the middle of them, and they can't really feel comfortable in saying everything they want to say. So it's a kind of state of fear that is among everybody in different levels or the class society. But even within that state of fear, there are ways, for example, through the social media, these WhatsApp groups or Telegram groups, I could see that there are groups that are coming together, sharing information, giving news to each other that things are happening, so how to react. So there are these small resistance cases, not very systematic, very case by case. And at the same time, yeah, just as Tuna mentioned, there is no complete passive reaction to these financializations or big developments.
Thank you, Azadeh. Professor Zhigang, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very good question. Of course, it's not uncommon to see resistance during such financialized mega project in China as well. There are always some conflicts or issues to lead to negotiate during the process of redevelopment. In the story of Wuhan, I think the three cases are relatively different because basically they are largely public space, especially the Greenway project. But there are also some stories of resistance because there are some so-called urban villages within around the lake, for example. When the government tried to build the greenways, so some villages could be not happy, or they ask for compensation, and therefore there are disputes and relocations of especially rural migrants from these villages to marginal areas of the city and so on. So definitely there are a lot of issues to be negotiated between government or the authority and the local residents, or especially the relatively marginalized rural migrants. So, but for the China, I think generally for the China story, the large-scale reconstruction of city center of cities happened before 2010, especially for Wuhan. Wuhan actually some relatively gentrified the central area around 2010. There are about more than 200 villages being demolished and reconstructed into real estate housing projects around 2010. So, I mean, as to the stories recently, most of the reconstruction either be the public space reconstruction or some projects with minor scale redevelopment. So the wave of resistance to such kind of projects is relatively decreasing. That's my feeling and understandings. Thank you.
thank you all for your replies. Who would like to go next?
Well, thank you for all your presentations. I would like to ask Maryame, because she mentioned that the king is a businessman, or you showed us that picture, and then you said that like the state is creating agencies to re-centralize the power. Is it like re-centralizing or transforming or maybe reproducing this power? So this is the question. So is it re-centralizing or reproducing?
Is it re-centralizing or
reproducing this power?
But so these agencies, like we can see this form of I was talking about re-centralization because, for example, in the European context, we could also see that kind of agency that had been created. I'm working in France, and we have different agencies that had been created in order to manage public policies also. And so this is not really specific to the Moroccan case. And I was talking about re-centralization because in Morocco, we was also talking about decentralizing the power and giving more power to local level, but that had been made really step by step, and it's mostly at the regional scale that the decentralization had been developed this last 10 years. But with this example of Agence d'aménagement de la vallée du Bourg-et-Grègue, the Rabat Région Aménagement, we could see how for really strategic area, there is the creation of this structure with a lot of power, with a lot of autonomy, with a huge support of the government and the royal cabinet, and also the governance of these agencies is mostly is really controlled by the government. So that's why I was talking about re-centralization of the power, and also that's why I was referring to the work of Renaud Epstein. I don't know how much you are familiar with his work, but he's working on the French context. And for example, the French state created the Agence nationale de la rénovation urbaine, which is a national agency for renewing some specific district. It's the district that had been created in the 60s in order to provide social houses, and now this area are on crisis. And so this agency had been created and had received a lot of money in order to impulse this new public policy. And so here was he talking about government from afar, because here we have an agency that receive all the project and finance that directly the different project proposed by the municipalities. So the money is centralized, and then we give to the territories. And that's why it seems to me relevant to use this concept in also for the Moroccan case. I don't know if I answer here. I was just saying that there is a question in the chat about the Moroccan case. I just would like to take 1 minute to respond to it. It's about how much this housing are then participate to contribute to the financiarization. There is some regulation in order to not resell the houses. I don't remember how much here people have to maintain to stay in the place that had given to them by the state, mostly for slum dwellers. But we could see that I didn't study that, but I have some colleagues, and one of them is Raphael Beyer. He studied the transformation of the market houses in the district produced by real estate agencies where there's the neighborhood full of social houses, and he see how much. So there is a lot of transaction, not always formal, but there are informal market, so people rent or sell the apartment, and I don't know how much that contribute to the financialization, but we see that there is a second market of these houses. But also one limit for this is that we already know that these districts are getting how to say. Some of them, some academics, and also in the public, in the mainstream media, they talk about ghettos. So the buildings are not really well built, and in the area far from city centers. So this area, some of this area are now facing like kind of marginalization, peripheralization, and yeah. So.
Thank you, Maryame. Thank you. I would like to take some more questions from the audience. Please go ahead.
I have a question for Azadeh. So in your presentation, you mentioned the sort of the strategic role of the mosque and the imam in transmitting the interests and the sort of the claims and grievances of the residents of this area to other state actors. And you said that they played a pretty like a very strategic role in serving as that broker. But at the same time, the mosque and the imam were also created by the foundation, no? So, no, they weren't. Oh, of the community, so they're completely autonomous.
Yes, so the mosques, the local mosques, and in general, the Friday prayer imams are independent from the foundation. So it's a very complex, so within this, let's say, religious network, there is also different hierarchies and divisions. And for this case, it was very interesting that local occupiers, they recognize these divisions and kind of use that to their benefits. So they kind of like got closer to the Friday prayer imam, which let's say ideologically is in conflict with the foundations. But I'm not sure if this is the case. We can kind of project to many other cases, or in some cases actually can go against the local people or their resistance. But in this case, it was very obvious, and through our interviews, we could find out that how locals could manage to come together with the help of the imam.
Can I ask a follow-up on this one? Because I find this point very interesting. So were you able to, did you interview the imams as well, the Friday imam, or not? Because it would be amazing to understand, because he is in a middle role, yeah, obviously. He's in this middle role trying to, I wish it was a she. So he's in that middle role, right, where he can really influence the government and can influence the community. I mean, that would be an interesting piece to follow up. I'm not sure if you have any plans or you're able to do that or not.
Absolutely. And we found out actually that the foundations usually try to bribe the imam. So they kind of find ways to donate parcels of the land to these Friday imam to kind of come together in some sort of like transactions. And this time they also tried, but somehow it didn't work out. So this is something actually, usually it's really hard to get to interview or speak directly with these imams, especially with academics. And my colleague on the ground, he's really trying to, but they don't do that. But yes, this is a great advice. I think we will try and hopefully find out more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for a fascinating and incredibly thoughtful panel. My question is for Zhigang, whose name I hope I pronounced correctly.
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
Can I just ask you to, it's one of these questions where you ask someone to elaborate a bit, because I just want to understand, and I know the paper is published, so I should probably just go and read it, but since we have you, the mechanisms that you identify, the land packaging and land financing, can you just explain a bit more, because I heard you say that the mortgaging rights are being mortgaged for financing, and I just wanted to understand if I heard you correctly and what exactly that entails, what that actually looks like. In other words, if you could just explain a bit more the mechanisms or the practices that are underpinning the mechanism of land financing that you identified. And the second question is there something in terms of the formation of the real estate group that is that you focus on, is there something unique or particular about the group in Wuhan that is different from how this is taking place in other cities? So you said at the outset that Wuhan is not looked at very often. Beijing, for example, gets more attention. And I'm curious if there is something particular about these practices and how they take place in Wuhan that is different from other cities in China, and why that might be the case. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, a very good question. I think the story I took a lot of time to explain is basically about the land finance system, which is somehow unique to China, but of course for Beijing and Wuhan, Shanghai, it could be almost the same. So this system emerged in the 1980s when China started to reform the economic system and introduce market-oriented reform. So one of the most important feature of the system is the granting of land use rights to developers and investors to allow them to use land as valuable asset for generating tax or revenues. So land use rights can be transferred or leased or mortgaged. That's what I mentioned about providing a source of funding for urban development projects. So therefore, the Chengtou company, as we say in Chinese, so it's a half government, half market player, take a role to act within this as a central actor in this land finance system. So they are local government affiliated companies responsible for managing and financing urban development projects. So basically, they borrow money from the banks, or they are using the land authorized from the government in their hands to loan money from the banks, and they use the money to build infrastructure and so on. So what I'm trying to highlight in the study is this system is so-called state entrepreneurial tools used by Chinese government to build cities, to build infrastructure, especially to achieve its planning aims. That's what I'm trying to do. I think comparing Wuhan and other Chinese cities, it's relatively the same in terms of the land sales as revenue source, real estate development as economic engines, and so on. But what's special in our story is the scale and the pace of development in Wuhan is relatively small scale or slow pace compared to Beijing or Shanghai, and also Wuhan's government resort to such kind of way to get loans and money from the banks or from the market to build its infrastructure in recent years. Yet in Shanghai and Beijing, there are already real changes because of the crisis of real estate market in China and so on. So I think relatively Wuhan is following the way way of Beijing and Shanghai, but at a slower step or speed. That's what that's my understanding. And also, I would to join the debate we just mentioned about different the possibilities of different kind of forces to build affordable housing or to play the role of financialized territorial development. In China recently, because of the changing market situation, so state-owned enterprises, so China's state half market, half government companies began to build, also became the major player of affordable constructor, taking the place of real estate investors. So this could also be some possibility of the future of such kind of housing construction. I mean, in terms of the question about investors could just looking for profits, but for those SOE, state-owned enterprises, maybe there are some new possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. I think we have one more question.
Hi. First of all, thank you for these interesting case studies and examples. I did. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So what I found most interesting is the relation between like financial power, political power, and their role in the city. And so I was wondering about the role of urban planners in such situations. Like, is their role to fulfill their clients' needs, such as the government or these organizations, or is it for society? And has urban planning become politicized? And since politics already shape the way we live our life, are they also shaping the way that we experience it?
I'm sure all of you would like to answer this one. So who would like to start? Azadeh, please go ahead, start.
Yeah, I can start. Well, thanks for the question. Big question, but good question. Yes, so the planners in these situations are basically can have multiple, let's say, roles and responsibilities. But at the same time, they can be very constrained with lots of, as you see, the multiple actors with different interests and that are coming together. So in my case, what I'm trying to understand as a planner, that actually how can we operate, but most importantly, first also how to kind of get to know these what's happening on the ground, because a lot of the time the problem with the planning and the planner is that we have a very fixated idea of how to do things or how to solve the problem, which actually is completely going against us. So for example, in the case I presented, the planners are completely dismissing the role of these foundations and the way they operate in the real estate market. What they see, they say these are corrupt activities. This is a very political, powerful actor that is coming and not listening and doing whatever they want to do. And we can't work with them. While we see that the plans that are proposed, even just for the city boundaries, that the planner draw the line and says, this is the boundary of the city, that line becomes the place of contestation. So where you draw that line, how you negotiate that line is all on the planner to kind of intervene and start to negotiate and understand these dynamics. So it's not that, I don't have a very obvious answer for you. I think we are all thinking about this together. That's where are we standing? What's our role and what's the role of the planning? Because I think Mona Fawaz wrote a very nice paper that planning is in crisis. So I think based on that the planning is in crisis, I would say we really need to take seriously revisiting our understanding of the city and the actors, and not knowing who is doing what, or imagining or boxing them in certain way is very, very dangerous and problematic. So first responsibility is kind of maybe de-learn and relearn, and then hopefully we find a way to kind of reinstate our position in the field again and in the city and in these very complex processes. So that would be, let's say, my take so far.
Thank you, Azadeh. Zhigang, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. This is a very good question. I think, like according to Peter Hall, planning is the arrangement of things. So therefore, planning could be everything and could be any dimension. But to my understanding, basically, on the basis of China experiences, planning is a mix of aesthetic issues. It's basically assemblage of different dimensions of governance. So therefore, in China, if we talk about urban and regional planning, so I think definitely it's very much politicalized, and also as to state entrepreneurism, basically it's planning centrality, market instrumental. So planning is a tool used by the state to achieve its strategic goals. So I would not use authoritarian or other terms to define it, but for the China situation, to my understanding, is planning is very much centralized or even re-centralized and upscaled to the central government in recent years. So it's actually an indication of the changing political trends of China today. And also, if we cite the famous quote of the philosopher Foucault, space is political. So planning is targeted on space, therefore planning is political. It also could be somehow reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhigang. Maryame?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this really good question. And I totally agree with my colleagues. Planning is political, and let's say everything is political. So why planning is not political? But so I think, yeah, it's important to have that in mind. And when I start studying urban sprawl in France and in Morocco, people was presenting me urban tools, etc., as something really like technical. It's a planner's issue. And as also Azadeh tell it just a few minutes, also in the Moroccan context, local actors are seen as people who are going to win something in urbanization. So they are not, so they have too much interest, so they are not pure, and so urbanism is something technical, and only planners could take part of it. But it's not true. And what happened is that urban planning is political. So then I would also say that as a teacher, as a researcher, but also as a teacher, I totally agree with what Azadeh said. So it's also our role to make people, to make our students, understand that, and make them go to the field and see what happened, and see in what kind of neighborhood they are working on, to discuss with inhabitants and also with local representative, with associations, etc., and to have in mind that when they will be planners, when they would work on planning, they need to keep that in mind and to always connect with the field in order to take part, to have that with them when they are working. And yeah, it's not only preparing planning documents in their office and reading diagnostics, etc. What they do had an effect on people, and not only on people, but also on people. And it's really important for me as a researcher, but also as a teacher.
Thank you, Maryame. I think that's a fantastic question to finish our panel today. I'll just have 2 sentences to say. I really found this, the 4 speakers fascinating, where we're really, talking about 4 case studies about, a very pyramidical power system in the 4 of them with different ideologies behind them, but they all use the same or similar mechanisms to really try and change things, within the urban core or beyond that. What I found also fascinating is that all of these are creating more sprawl, more gentrification, more wasted land. And I think moving forward, it's extreme. And here comes my environmental background comes in. I think we really need to think very hard. Why are we running so fast to do these developments when we are in an age of climate change, of inequities and disparities? So thank you very much for our speakers for fantastic presentations. Thank you for our audience, and I think we can close this panel at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.